For those of you who joined us since I was here before, I'm David Carmicheal, the State Archivist. And in this session, I am the interviewer of these fine people arranged to my left. In October of 2016, the State Archives issued a policy jointly with the state CIO that permitted state agencies to retain long-term retention records in PDF-A format. Up until then, if a record had a retention of more than 15 years, it had to be retained in eye-readable form, meaning microfilm or paper. And we decided that for long-term records, state agencies could retain them electronically if they did so in a PDF-A format with a lot of other regulations around that, as those of you who have looked at the regulations see. They're about 9 pages. But that was the bottom line. We said also they could retain permanent records as PDF-A after consulting with the State Archives, because the State Archives, in many cases, wants the original bit stream. We don't just want a copy, a PDF-A copy. We want the original Word document or Excel or whatever it is. So they have to consult with the archives and then can retain. In checking my notes here, in April of 2017, the County Records Committee adopted the same policy for counties and courts, but it expanded to include both long-term retention and permanent records could be retained in PDF-A format, again, following the guidelines and the policy that goes a little beyond that, but the bottom line is PDF-A is the format. We believe PDF-A has a very stable future ahead of it, and so that's one reason we're going that direction. So the 3 people here at the table with me have begun the process of trying to implement this policy, and I'm going to say on their behalf, if we hold this session again a year from now, you'll probably hear a lot of different comments from these folks than you're going to hear today, because they are just dipping their toes in the water, and I don't want to put them on the spot in the sense that they're going to have all the answers for you on how to do this, because in many cases they haven't done it yet. They've just begun thinking through the process. But we felt like at this stage it would be good to get together a group of people who have at least begun to think through it and begin to talk about what did they think about and what are they projecting out for the future, and also to hear your questions around that. So if you're joining us online, there is a box underneath your screen that you can submit a question, and we have somebody here who will take the question and get it to us on your behalf. So we invite you to do that. So let me introduce our panelists here today. To my immediate left is Matt Bixler from the Department of Environmental Protection. So he represents a state agency. Next to him is Evie Rafalko McNulty, who is from Lackawanna. She is the County Recorder of Deeds in Lackawanna County, and representing counties in that sense. And Eric Fetter is the Director of the Office of Judicial Records for the Civil First Judicial District of Pennsylvania, so representing courts. And again, all 3 of them have begun thinking through this policy. So just to sort of start things off, and we're not going to go around the table, we'll just let anybody answer who wants to, but what are the first things you think about in deciding to implement this PDF-A policy? Why do you want to implement this policy?
We just went into it. I think it's just in the long run, I mean, when we're facing questions and issues because there's lack of storage for the microfilm, and we're running out of storage in the salt mine, and we just to save money, that we could just do this and we could do it in-house. We don't have to use a vendor to create our microfilm and a third party to store it, where, what our goal is in Lackawanna County, that we're going to have 2 servers, one in our building, in our office, and one at the 911 center, so that will store our PDF-A, our records. So it's going to be a huge cost saving for us.
Same with me. I mean, to just follow up on what Evie said, I mean, the courts generally in county governments are the largest holder of paper in county government. We have paper everywhere. We have paper in our offices. We have paper in our attics. We have paper in our basements. We have paper in the county storage facility. And it is a huge cost for us and a huge burden. as we prepare for this, I mean, there are a lot of things that are going into it. One thing is we need to make sure is that our leadership is on board with what we're doing. So certainly our judicial leadership needs to know and approve of what we're doing, as does court administration. We all in the courts report to the Administrative Office of Pennsylvania Court, which is the Administrative Office of the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania. They are also on board with PDFA standards and are actually adopting standards on their own. A lot of what we do is actually docketed and stored by the state in Mechanicsburg. And come the end of 2018, my understanding is that they will also be storing documents with the PDFA standard and dealing with our criminal records for us.
I'm in a program where we do flood protection with the state. We have a lot of correspondence back and forth between municipalities. One of the things that we're looking at is how can we cut down essentially on mailing costs? How can we just do a letter, or here's a report about the status of your flood protection project in an email attachment? Make a Word document, turn it into a PDF document, sign it, lock it as a PDFA, drop it into an email, send it out. Somebody asks a question later, we can drop it into another email, send it out. That's part of what we're looking at. Large format drawings, we currently turn things into Mylar. We work with the Department of General Services, and they have a new e-builder system that they're working on implementing, and everything gets passed around in PDF format. So in the past, we've turned over Mylar documents. Documents in Mylar is a film with a long preservation rate, I guess you would say. And now they're not asking for that in the early stages. They're discussing whether or not they're going to ask for it in the late stages at the end after a project's built. So if we still do Mylar, maybe it's only just to turn it over to the state archives and to have it for our own record files to make reprints if we need. But turn things into PDF, goes into a server, somebody else looks at it, approves it, makes comments. Saves a lot of paper just being passed around, mailed around, hand-delivered, though I think we're still at the point that we pretty much print it, make notes on it, and then turn it into electronic and send it off again. So we're still not to the point of doing document review on the computer yet, so.
When Matt said it at first about doing the letter and turning it into a PDF, and that was just my concern. Can someone alter it? And I'm told now I know more about PDFA than I really need to know, because like really it's getting to me. But that supposedly there's a mechanism in the software that if someone tries, it absolutely cannot manipulate the project. That's what it is. In our office, we have to wait till the proofing and the validating and the releasing of a date to burn it into a PDFA document. And in your case, then, no one could ever, you can't do anything to the document. And I think trying to manipulate it could actually try to invalidate the document. So you become aware of it, that someone had tried to manipulate a PDFA. So there are many there's a security there to protect the integrity of the record, which is important in my office. And yours as well.
There's multiple digital signatures available with, let's say, Adobe products. There's digital signatures where you get a timestamp and some other things. And then there's just the sign a piece of paper, scan it, insert it as a signature. But it becomes something that can't be copied out. Whereas if you do it while it's still a Word document, you can copy the signature out and reuse it. Whereas if you do it using the Reader app, you get a black box when you copy and paste it into something else. We haven't gotten copies of Adobe Reader DC yet, or Acrobat DC, to be able to see how that works. But we've spent some time playing with the applications. All right, how does this work? Does this work well? Division chiefs ask questions. Okay, let's try this, try that, see what works.
And there's another question that I came out, in our survey map, our subdivision maps, are they easy to turn into a PDFA? Then there's the pixel requirement. Now, are you finding that as a problem? Because I'm thinking, I was told that could be a problem.
So we just took delivery of a new wide format document machine. It's an HP machine. And got it last week, and yesterday and today I've been writing instructions for everybody in the office to be able to use. And scanned a PDF. Scan. One of the guys is like, oh, was it PDFA? Well, I don't know. Hang on. Let me find the file. Open it up. It's PDFA. Is it searchable? No. Word documents and things like that, things that you put out to bid, documents that you may have for court proceedings or you for deeds, sometimes people may want them searchable. I don't know.
You have to do that at the beginning end, I'm told.
Right, you have to do that at the beginning end, or you have to run it through OCR software, which could be done later. For us, we may end up with a 500-page bid document. If you take it from Word, save it into PDF-A, it's searchable. But then depending upon what software you use to splice things together, you lose that.
So this leads me to another question, because I think if you're honest, I hope I'm not misjudging this, but the people I've talked to sort of had the opinion, oh, we're going to go to PDFA, it's going to be an easy thing because I've used Adobe Acrobat and I know you can just save as and you can save it that way. But as you've really begun getting into this process, a lot of questions have occurred to you, I'm sure, and a lot of barriers that you weren't expecting, like should we OCR it, and do we do it before we save it as a PDFA, do we do it after? What are the sorts of things that you're running into that folks need to think through and that you're still thinking through as you sort of get into this?
Well, I mean, one of the main things that we are dealing with right now is how to verify documents, because if we decide at some point to destroy the paper document, we need to make sure that the thing is verified. Right now, we are not doing a really good job of verification, and that's something we really have been trying to lock down and set up the proper protocols and procedures on verifying documents. Obviously, we don't want to have a document that is wrinkled or scanned in half and eventually have a judge come to us and it's like, what is this? And it's like, well, Your Honor, we destroyed the document. Because that judge can actually say, well, that you're in contempt of court and you're headed to jail for a couple of days. It's like, that's really not something we want to do. So, yeah, I mean, verification is something that's really important for us. As we move through also is like, how and when do we convert the document to PDFA? At one point, is that important? I mean, we don't, there's a requirement of doing dual storage here too. So, I mean, there's a cost out there too. So how much do we actually convert to PDFA? Some of our documents are not permanent or long-term storage requirements, and some are. I mean, we have documents that are permanent storage requirements. So, I mean, when do we do this and how do we do it is a real question out there that we really haven't finalized yet.
We, I talk a lot. I guess I figured that out, okay.
You were invited here to
We-
talk.
In Lackawanna, I had, all our records are digital from the beginning of the county in the 1800s. When I came into office, we, at that point, our subdivision and highway maps are in aperture cards. So we are doing a pilot program. We purchased a Scan Pro 3000, it's called, and it will take, we're gonna take, and we hand index on an Excel spreadsheet, the book that we have, the map index book. So we are going to use OCR as we scan each one of those aperture cards in. So because on the aperture card, it'll say book 6A page. So it'll be able to OCR and we'll be able to make the connection. This is, our fingers are crossed as we're saying this, but so that will be the case. Now, our vendor, we're going to save them right to a PDFA, but our vendor, who in the live format uses TIFF, he needs to take that, so it'll be maybe a couple minutes delay, I guess. So when he gets that project, he's going to have to transfer them back to a TIFF so that the public searching the documents can find it. and then our storage will be already created in the PDFA format. But, so there's like thousands of aperture cards that we're gonna do, and we're gonna actually be able to link them and bring them all into our indexing system, and so that we'll have all of them in a digital format. My concern was, and reading more, just last night reading some of it, and that's when the question came up, it's when you're doing a map. Now, this is all historical stuff anyway, but when I'm doing we scan our big maps as they come in, and we put them right into a digital format. I'm not sure what happens in the transfer. Do we lose some of the, and I'm not a techie, but you have to have so many pixels available. Yeah, the DPI, and to do that and to reproduce a map. So I have to double check on that. But that's what we're gonna do. We're shooting for January 1st, as far as then we're gonna do our daily recordings and go forward.
So you're going day forward on your.
And then once we know and we're comfortable with that, then we're going to, because I really won't use OCR in that respect, but I will, if I can, implement that when I start doing it, so that if sometime in the future we need to do, we need to search for redaction, we're pretty good in our office, we could run that, but I'm told then we could just, once we get our procedure and we're comfortable with it, we could run a conversion on a Friday into a Monday, and then they could back convert our files to a PDFA while the server still is working for, accounting for the public. There won't be a draw on it. So we're doing first with the map aperture cards, and if all goes well, that's what,
So what I'm hearing is there's an awful lot to think about to adopt this kind of policy. Just some of the things I'm hearing are, when do you do the conversion? And do you do it early in the process? Do you get the whole process done and all the signatures done and then convert it to PDFA? I'm hearing and the policy provides for two different versions. You can have a user version, and you can have then the preservation version, and it's the preservation version that has to be the PDFA. So you end up with two versions, but the preservation version is the one that never changes once it's captured as a PDFA. I've heard security questions that people have to think about around the document. When do you secure it, and how do you keep it secure? Redaction, I heard. OCRing, I heard, and when do you achieve that, and are you going to do it? Does it make sense for you to do it? Are there other things that you're thinking about that I don't have on my list here?
Well, so we see PDFs as two different types of documents. There are image documents. So take a letter you received, or a letter out of file, or a drawing. You take it over to a scanner, whether it's the copier, whether it's the plotter, it has scanner features, feed it in, you email the file to yourself, you get the file, you look at it. It's an image. It's flat. You can't search it. That's something that you could then run through OCR to be able to search it. I remember in college I used OCR to turn documents I made copies of from the state library and be able to use them to make quotes and for college research. They were never perfect. I always had to go through and fix a few things here and there, and I was taking it from an image to a Word document. Whereas if you start with a Word document, which our bid specifications are done in, and then you save it as a PDF, Word allows you to say PDF or PDFA, and you can sort of leave PDFA as the default if you want. Those are searchable. If I want to know where in the specification it talks about a flap gate, I can type flap gate in the find window, and it'll find every time I mention flap gate. Or a contractor could use it to figure out, oh, he mentions it here and here. Okay, so this is a section I need to pay attention to. This is part of my subcontract and what I'm supplying for a project. So they're two different things. Images pretty much are hard and locked. Can't really play with them. Whereas the text searchable, you can copy things out. But being able to actually play with it. Sort of depends upon how much money you want to spend on
Exactly.
software.
So those are the sorts of things you need to know about as you're looking at this.
Well, there are three different, Eric is using records that are constantly, they're updated, they're referenced, and the judges, and I mean, so in an appeal, everything, I don't know much about it, but I mean, you just, you're updating your records constantly. Mine are coming in, and that's it. You're creating them. I'm not creating, I mean, you're creating the documents, or your bid specs.
Some of ours come to you.
Yeah, so I mean, but you're creating your bid specs.
Right.
And you're creating the regulations where yours comes to me and that's what I record. So like, his is a different end of it.
Sure.
We're all kind of
Right,
different in that
so,
respect.
So Eric, how do you deal with records that are a little more active than maybe other people are creating?
Well, I mean, we have a case management system, so whoever's looking at our data can pull up documents through a case management system. One of the things that we're dealing with right now, though, is how we handle evidence that's introduced in trials. We get lots of pictures and lots of other kinds of documents, sometimes audio and video documentation too. And we really are needing to try to figure out how to handle that. Sometimes big presentations are made in the courtroom, and we're probably going to be taking pictures of these things and storing them and keeping them somehow as a PDF-A document. But, I mean, one of the things that we have been struggling with in the past is picture evidence that comes in. We've been scanning, and we look at the picture, and it comes out basically as a black blob. So we just need to make sure that our settings on the scanners are set properly so we can actually properly look at those pictures.
It's interesting because we've been asked, why we're not allowing more electronic records to be retained permanently or long-term in electronic format. And from the State Archives perspective, what we look for are formats that are appropriate for the type of material. Obviously, PDF-A is not appropriate for everything. For one thing, you can't put audio in a PDF-A, clearly. And you can't save a spreadsheet in PDF-A and then expect to be able to manipulate the data in that spreadsheet later on. So PDF-A captures a moment in time in that document, which is perfectly appropriate for many, many documents. And one of the issues we've had at the archives is, as we've looked over the years for appropriate formats, we've sort of, for a long time, we took the attitude, we're not going to do anything until we can do everything. And then finally, we took the attitude, well, with PDF-A, we can solve maybe 80% of the problem. Let's go ahead and solve 80%, and we'll deal with the other 20% over time. There are not good formats yet for preserving audio very, very long term. PDF-A is an open format that if Adobe were to disappear one day, someone could pick up the specifications for that and recreate the format. So we don't have to worry as much about it disappearing off the face of the earth. And there just aren't comparable formats yet for audio, video, and that sort of thing. So there's something we have to work with over time. But it's a very important point that one of the things you're looking at is what is appropriate to put into PDF-A and at what moment is it.
It was funny because a judge was working on an evidence protocol for Philadelphia. She's a great judge, very smart, but she wrote the protocol to say that audio and video files had to be saved as PDFs. It's like, Your Honor, can't really do that.
Not even a judge can make you do
Not
that,
even
right?
a judge can make that happen, right?
I never I didn't realize the depth of the work that has to be done there. I never even considered that.
Yep.
That's right. And it's true in state agencies as well. Certainly, across the Commonwealth, the agencies create many different kinds of data and information. And ultimately, we need to find ways to preserve those electronically. But we're not quite there yet. Fortunately, PDF-A works well for word processing documents and anything you want to just capture in time and preserve long-term. And again, I think it solves about 80% of our problem, and we'll work on the other as we find time. So are there particular software tools that you're using? Do you create the PDFAs as part of a workflow, or do you do it individually, item by item? What, you're smiling, Eric, so go ahead.
So, I mean, the answer to that for us is that's to be determined. Talking to our IT director, he said, we'll figure that out. So I don't really have an answer to that quite yet. But we're not going to do it as we create the scanned image. I mean, I think our plan will be to have some kind of workflow on the backside to convert things to PDFA.
It will be the same way. After the document is, let's just say a document a day is proofed and verified, and before we return it back, then we'll burn it at that point. But what the software we're using now, which is going to be, we're using Adobe Acrobat Professional, and then we're going to still look at some other alternatives. But inside our IQS, who is our InfoQuick recording software, they use Atlantasoft, which is built into the recording software. So we'll just, both foreign to me, so I had to ask those questions. They gave them to me, that's why I had to look at the list.
You don't have to understand all the
No,
technical
just-
details to achieve the result,
Yeah.
I guess. It's funny because a lot of state agencies I know are trying to move from microfilming permanent records or long-term records into PDFA, but they already have systems set up that will produce the microfilm at the end or send it off to a vendor to produce. And what we need to have in place for them are tools that can then do that as a PDFA rather than as a reel of microfilm. And that just takes time to get up to speed and work. And I know that PSERS and some of the other agencies are already working on that and converting their systems so that it's just part of the workflow.
For us, yes, Microsoft Word, create a PDFA, create a PDF, and then open it with Adobe and add a signature to it. Have individuals that have been doing that. It's been working for us. We'll produce on a design project for flood protection, we could end up with 10 to 20 feet of files in standard tab files. Are all of those permanent records? Are all those transitory records that are there? We're not always really good at having somebody sit down at the end and go, all right, I got 20 feet of stuff here. I wonder how much of it needs to go in the trash now, how much of it needs to go to archives on sort of the short list, term list, the medium term list, the long term list, and then we've got the permanent stuff because we build civil works and we have property contracts, we have contracts between communities and the Commonwealth, and well, it's a civil work, and so therefore we need to keep a plan of what was constructed in perpetuity and hand it off to archives. We're not always really good at that. Sometimes all 20 feet go off to get microfished, which gets you a lot of cards, which has a horrible index, and it takes you forever to find anything. So we're trying to do day forward activity as we move, as documents are created. The agency itself has a discussion that I hear things bounce off the walls about, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to send things off to this group and they're going to try and scan things. It's like, okay, we're going to tag them. You're going to tag them based on what? You're just, what the file folder says? What the contents are? Okay, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be any easier for somebody to sit down and find something than it was with the microfiche card.
So none of this relieves anybody of doing the basic records management work behind it. And I think a lot of times we think OCRing is going to solve the problem, but all that's going to do is increase the number of hits we get when we do a word search on something and maybe create a bigger problem. So in effect, you still have to do the grunt work to make sure this stuff is accessible over a long period of time.
It's so difficult. It just dawned on me here. I mean, I think it's going to be easiest for my office. Of course, when I tell them that, no, we're working really hard, but it's going to be easiest for us because I can't alter a document either way. It's coming in, and so that's what it is. But I mean, your file management is going to be,
Very
well,
important.
you guys got your hands full, no problem.
Having
I
used your
can't-
services,
Or the services of other recorder offices around the Commonwealth to look at who owns property. We need to figure out who owns this property. Does PennDOT have an easement on it already? Is there a pipeline easement on it already? Some of this we hire surveyors to do. The surveyors write plat descriptions and do plats, which we then end up, the municipalities file at the recorder's offices. The the ability to sit down and look online, to do the records research, and I realized that all the files I download and save are all TIFFs, which is kind of funny. I thought, I would think they would be PDFs, but I don't know whether file size they're smaller or they're easier. I don't know why that was picked.
They are, the TIFF is, it's taking up less space, I'm
Less
told.
space,
Yeah.
okay, all right. And so it's being able to search whether, and tagged as in who's the grantor, who's the grantee, you know, being able to find those things tagged in each file is a huge thing. For you, I could see being able to index them by defendant and
Yeah. I mean, for us, I mean, court rules actually require documents to be stored as PDFs. Most counties index documents through a case management system. So OCRing is a technology that I was using in my former job actually to do redaction, automated redaction. But then it got locked down again in a non-OCR document. Court documents, I mean, I don't know, as you were saying before, I mean, you OCR document, is it 100% accurate? Probably not.
Is it
And
10% accurate?
It's pretty good, but is it 100% accurate? Yeah, probably
To
not.
make that available is a huge expense, I was told.
It can be.
Plus, I mean, in our profession, I mean, some of the judges don't want these documents to be OCR searchable. They don't want somebody to be able to go into a document and it's like, go find what that judge did on that case and across the system. So, again, for us to do that, our judicial leadership would have to be on board, and they are not always on board with that kind of decision.
We
So-
would just use the OCR, and as I thought of it, I never, again, I would look at it as OCR for our indexing of our aperture cards, but it would be something, an ability only held in-house, so that if the federal government says we have to do redaction of Social Security or whatever, we back search page by page on our mortgage books, but if that was something I thought we would put in place, if in fact it became requirement, we would be able to do it, and at a huge cost savings for the county,
Sure.
but I was not planning on being able to, like, you come in and search something and then search it that way. I didn't think of that,
By full text.
yeah.
So I wonder if we can take just a minute here, if anyone in the audience has a question. And Tyler, I don't know if anybody's submitted any online that we could ask the panelists here, but let's start in the room here. And I'll repeat your question if you'll speak loudly.
And speaking in county policy terms for PDFA, I had read some county policies that had said there was going to be an Appendix C, whereby counties could submit if they're actually following the guidelines correctly. Is that out there, Appendix C?
So the question is for counties, whether there's going to be an appendix that certifies whether the counties are following the policy correctly. Is that, repeat your question correctly? Okay. I'm looking at Cindy Bendroth here in terms of, do you have a microphone there?
No,
Okay.
It is up there. It's on our website
Okay.
in the manual.
Cindy is in charge of the Records Services Division at the Archives, and she says it is on the website now. Okay. Now, we are not going to certify that the documents have been converted to PDFA correctly. We are looking for the counties to tell us that they have converted them before they destroy the originals. But you can see that on the website.
How do you combat the fact that you can save them to PDFA for long-term archival purposes, but the method and how you save it, whether it's on a disk, a USB drive, those things can deteriorate over time. They can be corrupted over time. What do you suggest or tell people from that point of view, where they deteriorate over a period of 10 years, whereas records retention period might be 100?
Sure. So the question is, how do we deal with the deterioration of the media on which the PDFA is stored? And that's why when I said originally the The policy is fairly long. It's about 9 pages long if you read it, and then we have another 9 pages of guidelines that help people figure out how to do the policy. So there's a lot of reading there. And the simple way is to say that you can keep things as PDFA. What the policy actually says is you must keep that PDFA in a live environment. It has to be a server environment. It can't be just on a CD or a DVD or a thumb drive. It has to be in some way that is backed up, that is secure, and that's why the policy talks about creating a preservation copy that is kept in a live environment but not accessed generally, have a use copy for accessing. So I urge people to read every page of that long policy. I think it's a good policy to allow us to keep things electronically, but we've tried to cover those questions of how do you deal with media degradation and that sort of thing. It's a good question.
We're actually going to do, like I said, we're having, one server's going to be inside in the house at the recorder deeds office, the other will be an offsite. So when they're burned and copied, it's going to be at 911 and in our office for this. And I asked why, because I thought the same thing. And because if something ever were to happen to this server, there would be no recourse. So.
Go ahead.
Just a follow-up
Sure.
question. For those agencies or offices which can't afford to maintain a live server because it is a cost, would something like an M-Disk be a suitable replacement for a live server?
So the policy right now specifies a live server. That isn't to say the policy will never change. And again, we're doing this sort of incrementally. Just as PDFA does not cover every record in the world, the live server doesn't cover every situation. And we do realize that that is a burden for people. And so we'll continue to look at technologies as they come out and see if we can find alternatives to that. Right this moment, we are archivists, so we're very conservative about how we maintain records. And so we're taking it just a little step at a time. And so right now, it's a live server, and that could change. We could also add other formats in the future as well. So we're constantly looking at this to see how is the industry developing and how can we make it easier for agencies and counties and courts to maintain records. For years, I felt like, we're sort of the barrier to people getting into the 21st century, and it wasn't because we wanted to be. I'm actually, my boss always says I'm the only archivist he knows who hates paper, because I like to keep things electronically. But we're not trying to create barriers. We're trying to create opportunities to do things electronically, but our main goal is to preserve and protect the rights of the citizens of the state, and that means sometimes we have to do things that are not so easy to make sure we do that. So, good questions.
So are all the current records that are at the state archive, are they going to remain as paper document, or eventually are those all going to go into PDF file as well?
So will the records at the state archives eventually all become PDFAs? We have 250 million documents in the archives, and we have about 15 million online, and I'm very proud that we have 15 million online. But I will be long dead when we get to all electronic. I think what is happening at the archives is that we are increasingly, as you can imagine, receiving the records from the agencies in electronic form. And so what's going to happen is, our growth in the future is going to be electronic records, and the paper is going to get less and less and less. And then eventually we'll get to the point where, let's go back and scan all the paper because we've stopped taking in new paper, but not in my lifetime.
So once the agencies start implementing the PDFA, we are to email it to the state archives instead of...
You can talk to Cindy about how that should work. It's not that simple, but it should work that way ultimately. And really, the key is to shut off the pipeline of paper that's coming into the archives or into the State Record Center. My office, since we run the State Record Center also, between the archives and the State Record Center, we manage 1 billion pieces of paper. There are no people in state government who have more incentive to get rid of paper than we do, okay? No matter how crowded your office is, you don't have 1 billion pieces of paper, probably. So, and our goal is to cut the pipeline off and get people to stop sending the paper. Then we'll deal with going back and scanning the backlog. So, Tyler, we have some questions from...
I have one from Diane Ruddy from Lackawanna County PennDOT. And she asked, occasionally I receive emails with voicemail complaints or other voicemail components. Are there any suggestions for how to save this voicemail if there's an audio component to a Word document?
So the question is, voicemails that come in that have to be preserved, is there any advice on how to preserve those? No. There's any of our panelists have any advice on this topic?
Would it be allowable to use a voice-to-text software to translate?
I know that my email or my voicemail, when it comes in, it gets translated to an email and sent to me as an email, which I can then save, or I have somebody transcribe it into a document. And transcription is better than nothing, and I suspect legally it's better than nothing. But we really do not have a good way to preserve audio files very long term. And my suggestion always is, and you all can speak to this as well, pick a format that is not Joe's pretty good format. Pick one that everybody's using and that is not likely to disappear tomorrow, the way Joe's pretty good format may disappear tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, as part of our evidence protocol, we've been trying to deal with audio and video files, and the solution we've come up with, for at least for now, is requiring whoever is preparing these audio or video files to give it to us on a thumb drive along with the player that it's created in. Since these players, who knows what the player is, so we want to be able to actually play the audio or video file.
It's one of the issues of preserving any electronic document long-term, because you need the file, but you need something to read that file. And you think 100 years from now, we have pieces of paper in the archives that have been sitting there for 200 years and nobody's touched them probably, but they're still there. And if you do that with a thumb drive and come back in 200 years, you won't even know what it is, probably, but you won't be able to read it, I'm sure. So, another question from?
We have another question from Richard Broadbeck from Bucks County. He asks, we currently have microfilm of our documents. Once we convert to PDFA and inform the archives, could we get rid of the microfilm? And also, what is the best way to convert microfilm to PDFA?
Okay, so the question is, once microfilm is converted to PDFA, can the microfilm be destroyed, and what is the best way to convert? There are many different, let's start with the second question first. There are many different tools for converting to PDFA, and I wouldn't suggest that one is better than another. If you've got a lot of microfilm to convert, you're probably going to need a bureau to convert it rather than doing it in-house. You may do it in-house, but eventually you're going to have to scan that film and then convert the images to PDFA. And there's probably a service bureau that can do that much more readily than an individual office can do it, unless you have a very small quantity of microfilm. The question about whether you can destroy the microfilm after you have scanned it, created a PDFA, and informed the archives, as long as you've completed the forms that we have and that we require you to submit, and we then authorize that, you can destroy the film. The policy actually says that you may now keep long-term records as iReadable in paper or microfilm or PDFA. So there's no requirement that you keep PDFA. You can still keep the microfilm if that works for your process, but it's any one of those. And Cindy, do you want to add anything to that? Since whenever anybody asks that question, I always call you and say, what are we doing about this?
I don't know how you put it at one point, there's, the really old records we're hoping that people aren't going to get rid of. Same with the microfilm, and that there might be, I don't know how you put it, like a moral imperative that you keep the older materials.
You have to look deep into your soul and see if you can destroy the original of this, but especially when it comes to paper. We have digital scans of William Penn's charter from 1681 in the state archives, but we're not going to throw out the charter, okay? Because there are reasons to keep the original. If we ever scanned correspondence from the 1970s from some state agency, would I throw out the paper? I would consider it at that point, because there's no intrinsic value to the paper, perhaps, there. So you've got to weigh the relative merit of the document you're looking at. And we're leaving that up to the agencies and to the counties to decide, because you know your records, you know your users, and you know your confidence level in the documents you're creating. I suggest verification is extremely important in those cases. Do any of you have any insight in that you want to throw in there?
It was well said.
Okay, all right, we'll leave it at that then, okay.
Yep.
I'll take responsibility for that. Any other? Yeah, I know. You know what? I'm fearless. All right, we have a few minutes left here. We had another question over here, I think.
Yeah, if you have, hi Cindy, if you have user version and a preservation version, PDF-A, and you need to reference the user version periodically, is that a searchable document? I think I heard you say that, but we have hundreds of grant agreements in your warehouse, you know, and every now and then we'll send someone over to get them because we need to research and verify something. So if you have everything saved to PDF-A, is it something that's easily searched and referenced?
I'll turn to you all to answer that.
For us, a bid specification that we create in Word and save as PDF-A and use Adobe to splice it together stays just as searchable as the Word document. It's when we have to, cover page, we have to have an engineer's seal and a signature on it. Well, the cover page isn't searchable because it becomes an image. You print it out, kind of takes this rubber stamp, seals it, signs it, we scan it, becomes an image, it replaces, use Acrobat Pro, replace the Word version with the image version, and that page isn't searchable, but the rest of the document's searchable. So, that, yeah.
Yeah, so a signature page may not be searchable,
Right.
but also at the same time, the entire document then is not alterable, right?
If you have it secured as a PDF-A, you will receive a warning before you can change it, and you have to make a conscious decision to take it out of PDF-A to change it. This is why we suggest that there is a preservation copy that is never changed, never touched, and a use copy that you search on a daily basis and use. And if you had to change it for some reason, you should then replace the preservation version with the new version at that point.
Well, our PDFAs are not, that's what they're going to be. We're never going to touch them. You're still gonna, when you're using, in our office, you're gonna use that live TIFF, you're gonna see that. Now, and that's why, and then the preservation files is just going out to County Never Never Land, waiting, you know, that's where that's gonna be. But when you search our records, you're gonna be into looking at the TIFF, because that's what our vendor uses, which kind of, when we said it before about the OCR, wouldn't be available to the public, but it would be kind of a back-end search, and that's when I asked, when we create the documents or transfer them into a PDFA, can we implement OCR so that in the end, if we needed it, it would be there? And I was told it's gonna be considerably a lot of money, but I will use it when I do the maps, just for the indexing part, but when that map that we create and we index automatically using OCR, when it goes back out for the public server in the live format, it's gonna be back to a TIFF. So it really is not going to, and probably in all our records, we're gonna do, in mine anyway, you're gonna be in a live format search in the records. It's not, because you're gonna see what's recorded today in our office, and that's a TIFF. Now, it's not gonna be a PDF until 3 or 4 days from now, until we've verified it. So I think, and I really do, I think every one of us are so different. The regulations are just so.
Well, and it points out the need to really think through how you're going to do it and test how you're going to do it. You had a follow-up question.
Okay, so if I have a preservation version that's on your servers,
It would not be on my servers. Not today, not today.
it's gonna be on our servers?
It raises an interesting question, like where does that preservation copy reside? The policies right now leaves that onus on the state agency and the county. You have to determine where that sits. Now, the state archives is in the process of developing a digital archives where we hope one day these things can sit. We do not have that capacity today to do it.
In the case where that document would be used for legal purposes, for verifying court case or whatever, is one version considered more valid than the other then? I keep a user copy on my local server or in my, hard drive. Is that as valid as the one that's?
I'm not an attorney, nor do I play one on TV.
But
However, if I were, I would say, for my purposes, the preservation copy is never
Access
accessed.
at all. I think it
Therefore,
says it in there.
If,
Yeah.
if you had to prove, if the court case came down to you had to prove that this document has never been changed, I would go back to the preservation copy to prove it had never changed, rather than the use copy. But it really is a matter of what are the consequences? If it's a simple thing, you can use the use copy. If it's a capital case, I'd go back to the preservation copy probably.
But the law
Eric, you
says,
may have
I
you
believe
have a
it
better.
says you can't.
Well, I mean, certainly, with court documents, we are going to be using the user copy, and the preservation copy is going to be kind of someplace else and replacing microfilm, so.
So
hopefully we'll
are
never
there
use it.
instances in which you would use the preservation copy?
Only if we had problems with our user copy.
Okay, all right, that's.
You could use the preservation copy, theoretically, your preservation copy is off-site in a secure location that has good electrical supply, that the servers are just able to chug away, and every now and then, once a week, somebody goes over and uploads more files onto it. And the user copy is somewhere in a machine room, maybe in the county courthouse, maybe off the aisleway in the Recorder of Deeds office. It's wherever in the world DEP keeps their files. And if it takes a hit, the machine all of a sudden decides to blow a circuit and it melts down. Somebody goes over to the preservation copy, sucks off the entire file base and sticks it in a new machine.
Or if
It's
we're
built.
using the cloud and the cloud somehow disappears, hey,
Right.
who knows what's gonna happen, right?
Well, it specifically says in there, Cindy, I'm throwing another question to you. It specifically says in the regulation that cannot be used. It could not be drawn down on, and that's specifically for the archival preservation. You can't even.
Which is why I turn to her when I
That's
ask these
pretty
questions.
good.
We assume, the policy does say that. We assume that there are going to be occasions when the preservation copy has to be used. For instance, if your server blows up and you lose it all, that's why you have a preservation copy, so that you can restore your use copy from that. But this is going to be there's a certain extent to which this is an agency decision or a county decision how these are going to be used. The preservation copy, though, is the one that we don't ever want changed. We want to make sure that it's locked down, secured, and not ever altered in any way. So, hope that answered the question. Yes?
Handle large, say you got a massive amount of PDF files, existing PDF files, you want to move them to PDFA. Is there an easier process than touching in each document individually?
Okay, so the question is there an easier way to create PDFAs from PDF through a batch mode so that you're not touching each individual document? Have any of you used,
We haven't used it yet, but I'm sure there is software out there that will do that for you.
if you Google this, you'll find a lot of different software packages out there that will do batch conversion of records. I would caution people to go back and do a certain percentage of verification, though, after that, to make certain the conversion worked properly. If you're doing an individual PDFA, there are tools within Adobe Acrobat, the full version, that will analyze what is happening to your document as it's being converted and will alert you if there's some mistake in there or something that's a red flag. And so if you're doing a batch conversion, which I assume many people are going to do, most people are going to do, you still want to be able to go back and get error reports or to do spot checking at least to make sure that conversion was done properly. But there are tools out there. You have another question?
Yeah, I have a question from Carol Culbreath from Lower Gwinnett Township. And she asked, once the document is scanned, can it be shredded? If we receive a record in electronic form, must it be printed out and then kept as a permanent record, or can it be kept as an electronic record?
Okay, it's a long question. I'm going to try to summarize it. Can a document be shredded after it's scanned? And if we receive a document electronically, does it have to be printed out to be preserved? So again, the policy is that for state agencies, for long-term records, and for counties, for long-term records and permanent records, if they're retained as PDFA, that can take the place of the paper record, and so the paper does not have to be retained. For state agencies, if it's a permanent record, you may be able to keep it as a PDFA permanently, but you have to consult with the state archives first to see if we want the original version of that document. So the question of whether an electronic record has to be printed out. If you can convert a record you receive electronically directly into PDFA, then there's no reason it ever has to see any other state. It doesn't have to ever go into paper form. It just needs to be converted to PDFA and then preserved in that way. And again, to ask the people here, you're receiving electronic records, I'm sure.
Do we print it out? Only if it wants us to.
Don't tell me.
No, we would really prefer not to print out an electronic version of a document.
Okay, so you just convert directly to PDFA?
Yes.
And
it comes in, and even if it's electronically submitted, or if the document is submitted, we scan it into a TIFF, and it goes out there, and as it is now, we're at the end of the month creating our microfilm, but it will be, when the verification process in days, then we will turn it into a PDFA, so, and we turn the paper back. We don't keep paper.
I love you.
For us, we receive things in PDF. Some of them are PDFA. It's a question of, is it transitory or not?
Right.
If we're doing descriptions and plats, which will eventually be recorded, is it accepted? Or is this considered a progress document where, okay, here's your list of written comments, then resubmit? You know, we're not worried about PDFAing that set of documents. When in the end we get something that is able to be recorded, what we really want is we want the plat, the description, the easement, and her receipt that says this is the instrument number and where it can be found at her recorder's office. That whole set then is what we want as a PDFA.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, because when we issue a policy like this, and I just listen to people talking about it, there's sort of a natural assumption, oh, we should just put everything in PDFA. And I think you've got to look at your own office and say, what portion of this do we need to retain for a very long time? And do we just want to put that portion into a format that we can retain for a long time, put that into PDFA? Or is it easier just to do everything as PDFA? That depends on your office and how you do things. But think about it in terms of, it's a tool that you can use when it's appropriate. When it's not appropriate, use a different tool. But think about this as a new opportunity. I think one of the things I've heard as I'm listening here is that people are just stepping forward doing this, and it's made them stop and think about their whole records management process and their whole process for handling documents. And that's a really positive thing. So if you've not launched into this yet, I hope you'll take what you've heard today, and I think we've heard some really good advice here and interesting, thought-provoking things, and think about how you manage your records. How does this fit into that whole process? And what are the opportunities that you see around this new policy? So I want to thank the folks here who sat and sort of stuck their necks out to say that they're daring enough to try this and talk about it, even though they're not clear to the end yet. But I thank Eric and Evie and Matt for participating. So thanks a lot. Appreciate it.